Welcome to the Hay Kings podcast, brought to you by Chrome, dedicated to hay and forage producers. Today I'm joined again by Don Schilling. He's the owner of Westco International in Ellensburg, Washington, a longtime hay exporter and true industry expert. He's joined us before, and I'm happy to have you back, Don.
I'm happy to be back.
Let's start with the elephant in the room. There's no secrets. We're not talking about anything that's inside baseball now. Anderson Hay filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which, to clarify, is not liquidation, but reorganization. We want to frame this really carefully. We both know folks from Anderson really, really well, and we certainly wish them the best in all that they're going through. To clarify, they're still operating and working on a debt restructure plan. But we really want to frame this as Anderson being a symptom of a bigger problem, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So again, all of our support goes out to the folks at Anderson and what they're working through right now. We're certainly not picking on them, but it is a topic in the news. Where do we start, Don?
I think we also need to say that news of the Chapter 11 filing has impacted significant number of growers in the basin, growers and vendors, and the impact of it cannot be overstated, right? Because you're talking about
the ripple effects.
The single largest U.S. owned hay export company, single most significant player in the U.S. hay export industry. No offense to all the other exporters, but Ron Anderson, he built an export juggernaut. It defined the industry. He pioneered the market. As an individual, Ron was this is a bit of hyperbole, single-handedly built this market. There are 3 companies in Washington still in existence. There were 4 hay exporters in 1971 when the industry started. Amtrade went bankrupt a long time ago. Anderson Hay and Grade, Wardrew, and Westco. And Anderson was always the 600, 800-pound gorilla in the market. What has happened has shocked everybody, right? If day before Thanksgiving, someone would have asked you for odds on Anderson filing bankruptcy, you would have named a number of other exporters, and Anderson wouldn't have been on the list.
Just to clarify, the filing did happen the day before Thanksgiving.
Okay, so I think you still could have gotten odds the day before Thanksgiving.
I think so too, yeah. No, I completely agree.
So customers in Japan, Korea, China, the Middle East, this is just a shock. It's a huge shock. It's tragic for everybody that's personally involved in it, whether as an employee, as a grower, as a vendor. There have been lots of sleepless nights. You can well imagine the past week. What are we going to do? How is this going to play out? And so, nothing that we're going to say, certainly no comment that I want to make is intended to cause further anxiety or to seem insensitive or anything like that.
These are our friends and neighbors, right?
It's a terrible thing.
Yeah.
And the hay market's big enough, can support a lot of people. We don't need other people to have problems in order to do well. It's just not that way. But there is a huge amount for us to learn from this. It's really, really important that we try to understand it. And by understand it, I don't mean, what did Mark do here? What did Mark do there? What was the first mistake? What compounded it? It's not that, because it's an industry-wide issue that we have to come to grips with. It's not something unique to Anderson Hay and Grain. I cannot imagine that any hay exporter has made money in the past 5 years. I cannot imagine that any hay exporter has done anything other than lose eye-watering amounts of money.
No, you're not talking about individual hay sales, but on the aggregate, if you look at the end of the year numbers, it's not been good.
How do you lose money in the hay business, in the hay export business, right? How do you lose money?
Right. You buy high, sell low. And it's that simple.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So the bigger you are, in a good year, you're going to make more money than anybody else. In a bad year or in a bad series of years, you're going to lose more money than anybody else. We live in a capitalist economy. I think, as a small businessman, I certainly believe in the free market, and I believe in that markets send signals, and we might get surprises and there are shocks and everything, but markets try to find a balance in order to be successful over time. You can't ignore those market signals. So when something like this happens, you have to say, what did we miss? Not what did Anderson miss?
What did everybody miss?
What did the industry miss? They're the same thing. Export statistics, USA exports are down 25%, from 4 million down to 3 million tons. That's huge. What happened? What happened? Are there less people in the world today? No, they're not. There's more people in the world today than there were yesterday, than there were 3 years ago, 5 years ago. Can we blame this on the price of oil? Can we blame this on the minimum wage? No, we can't. That doesn't explain it.
Right. Those might be very, very small components of unique losses, right?
Right. Input costs change every year, right? They go up, they go down. How come we can't just ride this out? How come our industry can't just ride this out? There has to be fundamentally either a change in demand or a change in supply, right? What else is there going to be? If you said to yourself, well, heck, acres are down, so it's got to be a change in demand. No, you got to open your eyes. We are not the only game in town. Oh, the Canadians, the Californians. It's like, no.
We need to talk about the Australians, the Argentinians, the Italians, the Spaniards,
the Australians,
the Romanians,
the South Africans,
yes,
the Romanians, right? And you would think,
the Latvians.
What, are you crazy?
No,
you're talking about Romania. Are you crazy?
Turkey. Yeah, there's been a lot of forage projects that have gone, and when I say forage projects, large companies going in and developing a big enough area of ground to support a press.
So why does that happen? Right?
Because they can do it cheaper there.
And why do people start thinking about, I can get it cheaper? So when our industry started, right, in the early 70s, we were the cheapest supplier of forage in the world.
The West Coast is a great place to grow hay. We've talked about this before. Yep.
And it still is,
yep.
Right? We have fundamental advantages that remain to this day that we have to be aware of. But we've gotten out of balance. And you have to say, yeah, but Don, you just said markets send signals and they balance themselves. And so how did we get out of balance? Well, I maintain that some of these signals were obscured, right? So back in the day, back when the hay export industry in the United States got started, all the hay exporters were local people. Everybody knew everybody.
And their kids and their dogs. Really, really well. Very small community.
And you could define the world supply, right? If you look at Timothy hay just as a microcosm, because that's really where things got started. I can remember, this 35 years ago, standing, by a hay barn in the Kittitas Valley with a customer, realizing that if I looked to the north, I saw the northernmost boundary of the Timothy world. And if I looked to the south, to the hills to the south of the valley, that was the southern boundary. And if I looked east and west, and the eastern boundary of the Timothy world was before you hit ryegrass, right? Before you left the Kittitas Valley, because there was virtually no Timothy being grown in the Columbia Basin.
Just the tiniest little bit up in my neck of the woods. And
I said insignificant.
Oh, right? Okay, all right. The tiniest little bit. Because we were there. My family's been exporting Timothy since the late 70s.
Yeah. I'm talking about, yes, okay, very good.
Yeah.
but I stress insignificant.
It is. In all fairness, yes.
And the fact that you had every importer coming over and inspecting all the hay, all the supply, you knew by the 1st of August, how much hay there was, what the quality was, what price would work. And you could lock in prices, plus or minus transportation costs. You could lock a price in for the whole year. There was stability. The only question was, how do you get more, right? How do you get more? It wasn't, can I sell this hay, or is the market going to hold?
Then that geographic boundary had to expand, right?
Exactly. And then supply was limited. Prices got a little bit eye-wateringly high for the day, right? These naive farmers in the Columbia Basin who didn't know that they couldn't grow Timothy planted it. And in their ignorance, they grew it. And they
successfully.
It. Yes. Right. Over time, very successfully.
Yeah.
And fortunately for us, with a weak dollar and a strong yen and a rising economy in Japan, you went from what was almost exclusively what began as a horse market to a dairy market.
Which is a much bigger volume, right?
Much, much bigger volume.
Yep.
Which allowed for the supply to grow as dramatically as it to double, to more than double, right? The alfalfa side, it kind of paralleled in terms of its growth. The alfalfa market has always been bigger than the Timothy market.
Because it goes to cows. It goes to largely goes to beef and dairy cows. Absolutely. And there's just more of that than that initial racehorse market in Japan.
And it has a way higher feed value, and rationally, you would include it in a ration much more readily than you would Timothy, especially given the price. So you had market signals. The market was growing, the Korean market was growing. You start 15, almost 20 years ago, the China market for alfalfa really,
started in 08, right?
Came out of nowhere, right? Came out of nowhere and grew at a faster rate than Japan ever did, right? You got these really strong signals that there's more demand out there. There's more demand out there. I need to get another hay press. I need to get a third hay press. I need to get a fourth hay press. I need to get a fifth hay press, right? In order to meet that demand, other people said, this looks like a good business to get into, right? So the number of exporters, and when I say exporter, I'm going to define an exporter not as a guy with a pickup truck, but as a company with a press facility and the ability to press hay, right? So there are guys that export hay that they have a pickup truck and they buy the hay, they custom press it somewhere and they export it, and they're in every sense an exporter, but they don't add to capacity, right?
No other square baler has a bigger appetite for the most demanding conditions than Krone HDP2 Big Pack. 8 knotters put more hay on every bale, and a new V-knotter design makes hanging on the bell hook almost impossible, requires fewer adjustments, and leaves no scraps behind. See it all at krone-na.com. Krone machines built for generations.
One of the things I've been really careful about in this let's just call it a hay industry meltdown, is talking about not individual export companies, but rather that press capacity.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because we've had too much press capacity for some time, because we were 4.2 million tons was our peak in 22. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yeah.
And none of the presses were running 2 shifts, 6 or 7 days. None of that. We were not maximizing that press capacity. No. My guess is we could have pressed 5.5 million tons if we ran easy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Easy. If we'd have run 1 extra day a week. I mean, the livestock guys have this conversation all the time about slaughter facility capacity, whether it's 2 shifts, 1 shift, 5 days a week, 6 days a week, 7 days a week, right? If we take that same thought process and apply it to the hay export industry, we had a ton of capacity.
Now you had times, where we were running 3 shifts a day, 6 days a week.
Right. But not for the whole year. Not everybody was doing that.
this was pre 2020. 2022, I think, is a watershed year.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. 100%.
And certainly 2020, the ground started to shake underneath your feet. Right. But
that was my favorite year ever. All the inputs fell to the floor, and with the COVID shock right in the spring when we were buying everything. And then we started to come out of that COVID shock just as we were selling the product, and life was great. That's the farmer's perspective, of course.
If all this increase in capacity had been individual small businessmen, right? I don't think we would be where we are today. So if you look at the hay export industry, you have to look at the players. So you started out with Ron Anderson and his generation, Eddie Eckenberg, regular guys.
Yep. Real people. Yeah.
Were entrepreneurs, started from scratch, and you ended up involving multi-billion-dollar corporations. So Sumitomo, right? Mitsubishi, Honda, all Kanematsu, right? All either operating their own press facilities or partnering up with U.S. companies. So that first wave, those were Japanese companies, right? You saw 20, 25 years ago, Zeno, the government of Japan, get involved. But the Japanese corporations realized, they gave it a certain amount of time and then they got out. It wasn't the gold mine they thought it was going to be. They planted a flag, they have a place, but they haven't grown. They haven't opened more facilities anywhere. They're kind of static. Same thing with Mitsubishi, but you saw Honda, KG, Sumitomo get out. So that was the first wave. They correctly recognized this is not a commodity thing. You can make mistakes. You need owner operators.
You can't trade hay the way that you trade grain. It doesn't work.
Exactly.
There's too much product differentiation that nearly everybody just completely misses.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And I think that the next round, if you were to say what's the history behind this bankruptcy? Well, it started. I'm going to say it started when ACX moved up from California and built a plant in Ellensburg. And they were very upfront why they were doing that. And it was, we're gonna eat Anderson's lunch, right? You're jumping ahead.
Okay,
you're jumping ahead on the story. You're jumping ahead on the story. So ACX was owned by a couple of partners, American guys, right? Essentially the Gambos family. They were into trucking and domestic hay sales down in California. They got into export, alfalfa, Sudan. They were the Anderson of California. I think everybody thought economy of scale. I've got everything you've got except for Timothy. How do I get Timothy? Well, I come up to Washington and I take you down a peg, right? And now I have everything. I've got Sudan, I've got Kleingrass, I've got Bermuda, I've got PSW alfalfa. Now I've got PNW alfalfa, and I have that Timothy, that magical Timothy.
That's Pacific Southwest and Pacific Northwest. It's our market differentiators.
Yep, exactly.
Almost 100% of the hay exported from the U.S. is from the West Coast. There's some small amounts out of the Gulf Coast and the East Coast, but it's very, very small compared to.
Yeah.
So as we're talking about it, basically California and Washington, with Idaho and Oregon splitting.
Arizona.
Arizona is going to be in the
Utah,
PSW, and then Utah generally goes south. That hay inventory goes south for export. Yeah.
So you saw that, and so those two titans, slugged it out.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you do that? ACX came up to Washington and said, "We'll pay more than anybody else." I mean, they said that. We'll pay more than anybody else. Whatever the price is, I'll pay you $10 more. They had to buy in, right?
I hate that.
Which
I'll pay you $10 more than anybody else is the quickest way to turn me off. Is like, no, we're not playing that game.
Yeah, and yet
Yep.
we do. And yet we do.
Yes.
Right? If we were only talking about $10 a ton, you could survive that.
Bidding wars are a thing. I mean, yeah.
So what's the history there, right? So ACX was so successful in that strategy that they had to take on a partner. And that partner was from Abu Dhabi, right?
Yep.
That partner was from Abu Dhabi. For those that are not geographically aware, right? Abu Dhabi is one of the Emirates in the United Arab Emirates, just there at the Straits of Hormuz, opposite Iran, southeast of Saudi Arabia, on the Persian Gulf. A tiny, tiny little country, run by a couple of families. It's a monarchy. They have a lot of oil money, not compared to the Saudis, but they have a lot of money. And one of the things that they wanted to do is, it's all sand. If you go over there, they got nothing. It's sand. It's oil, and
high-rise skyscrapers built with oil money.
And the founding sheikh planted millions and millions and millions of date palms, right? And their traditional industry before they discovered oil was pearl diving. I mean, it was a backwater and it was poor. And it was a British protectorate, and they discovered oil and gas, and the rest is history. Now it's the tallest building in the world, the biggest this, the biggest that. And one of the things that they wanted to invest in is food security. And that includes animal feed. They invested all over the world. In the United States, they invested in the hay export business. That business continued to run so well that they forced their partner out. They bought them out, right? They had a clause that they had an option to buy them out, and the Gambos family was bought out. So ACX then became eventually wholly owned by the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Abu Dhabi, owned by a government, an oil-rich government in the Middle East that has financial resources that dwarf every other U.S. American hay exporter put together times 1,000, a scale that we can't quite even imagine. So how do you compete with somebody like that, right? How do you compete with somebody that has the ability to buy high and sell low,
or where money matters less?
Well, their priority was never to make money, right? It was to provide food security so Aldara, it's Aldara ACX now, right? And it's Aldara that's owned by the Sovereign Wealth Fund. I mean, they have ag projects throughout the world. It's not all hay, although they have hay projects in other parts of the world, but they have produce and rice and grain and
it's food security is what they're
it's
actually.
Food security.
They're buying food security.
Yes, exactly. Yep. And there's also this argument we need to diversify our economy. They're not a third world country by any means, but they're a lot closer to third world situations than we are, and they recognize the value of food security, right? That is something that it's not a bad place to be. I think the fact that you had players like that, I mean, we were able to withstand in the role of Japanese conglomerates, billion-dollar companies being in the hay business because they were rational and said, yeah, we're out of here. The return on investment doesn't justify our role. We're out of here. Now you have players that are not motivated by a profit motive, right? They have different set of priorities. And I think when you saw 2022, you look at those hay prices, that was not the market saying to us, we'll pay $300 for alfalfa and $400 for Timothy. That was this competitive environment here. That was Anderson competing with ACX and everybody else saying, well, if Anderson and ACX are doing it, we got to do it too. Otherwise, we're not going to have the hay. We're going to be out of business, right?
Yeah, and from the individual press operator standpoint, it's a factory that you have to keep busy.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it's a non-performing asset.
Right. If you were competing with other companies that were driven by a profit motive, we all would have hit the brakes and said, okay, I know fertilizer's up. I know chemicals are up. I know commodities are up, but if I pay this much for the hay, I can't sell it. I can't sell it. So why buy it? I mean, internally, over the course of the past couple of years, there's many times where I've said we would have been a lot of money ahead by just paying everybody 40 hours a week and painted the fence over and over again, rather than pay the prices that we paid for hay and then taking the loss when we sold them.
This is introspective, is what I'm hearing. This is not you taking shots at the other participants in the market. This is what you did, right?
We all did it.
Yep.
We all did it. And I think that, so what's the bigger story? What's the biggest story of 2025 in the hay export industry? 2 days before Thanksgiving, you would have said the biggest story is ACX is for sale, right? That would have been the biggest story. What do you mean they're for sale? What do you mean? Well, the corporate guys came over and they're closing their California plant, and they approached other exporters to see if they could sell their facility, and they want to get out. That would have been the biggest story. Day before Thanksgiving, okay, the headline changes. What's the biggest story in the hay export industry of 2025? Chapter 11 filing, Anderson Hay and Grain. Is that it? I don't think so. I don't think so.
This is not the end of the story.
No.
And it's not the end of the story for Anderson too. Let's put a point on that. That's not the end of the story.
No, but I think this is the culmination of years worth of our industry getting the signals wrong. And it's not the grower's fault. None of this is the grower's fault. I'm sure there are people that are going to say, if the growers hadn't charged this much money, we never would, no.
Somebody offered that money, right?
If somebody comes to you and says, I'll give you $400 for your Timothy, the only question you should be asking is
when do I get paid?
When will you pay me?
Yep.
Right? When will you pay me?
That's the only question.
Yeah. Right. And it's not the grower's responsibility to ensure that the exporter is profitable and stays there. And you'll hear,
and it's an impossibility to know, right?
Exactly. And every once in a while, a grower will say, hey, this is not good. We need healthy customers. We don't need prices to be this high.
Everybody along the way has to make money. Everybody in that value chain, but it's also not the grower's responsibility.
It's not his responsibility. Yep. And it's the same way our customers, sit in the conference room and they will spend an hour telling you about the milk price in Japan or the milk price in Korea or the exchange rate this or, consumption that. And you have to be polite. You have to nod your head. You have to sigh in the right places, but that's not your problem. If they can't afford it, that's not your problem. To our better customers, the ones that are a little more sophisticated and you've known them for a long time, you can say, look, the U.S. hay farmer, he doesn't care about the milk price in Japan. He really doesn't care about it. And he doesn't care about the exchange rate. This is the product that he's put up. These are his inputs. This is the price. Are you going to pay it? Because if you don't pay it, somebody else will pay it. So you want the hay or not, right? You got to.
Yep. You have to simplify.
Has to be very diplomatic, right?
Yeah, of course.
But that's been the case. So none of this is the grower's fault. None of this is their fault. They didn't encourage this. They just, you handed them the money and they took it. I've never had the experience where a grower said, "Here, let me give you some money back." I don't need $280. I'll take $260.
No.
And the way that we justify that is, this is a market, and the market is the market. There's a market price. But I think the fallacy there is if the market price is established in large part by players that are not motivated or concerned about making a profit, then that is not the market price.
The all-new Krone Gen 5 Big Pack Large Square Baler gives you outstanding reliability and serviceability. The completely updated VFS makes serviceability easier, faster, and more economical. Talk with your local dealer to learn more about Krone machines built for generations.
So the argument that you've just made is that ACX has been here competing for food security in their own country and not here to make money.
Exactly.
And that it's been a market disruption. But then you went to go on to say that they're offering their operations for sale, which is indicative of that's an exit. We're done. We want to secure our food, but we can do it cheaper somewhere else. That's what I hear. That's what I hear. Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I just an observer. You look back at this, and if you were sitting in Abu Dhabi 20 years ago and saying, whether it's the rice business or corn or produce, they do not have a history of agriculture, right? Other than growing dates and animal husbandry, right? Goats and camels, and then horses, of course.
Did the horses come with the oil, or they were there a little bit?
They were there. No, they were there well before the oil. They just couldn't afford as many.
Okay. The quantity of horses increases.
Right. And the quality of horses.
Sure.
Who's got the expertise in this hay export thing? What country? Oh, the Americans. Well, they're essentially the only player. Let's invest in that. So through that investment, you gain experience on the equipment. Let's face it, hay presses, it's not rocket science, but there's not a lot of manufacturers. How do you organize the supply chain? How does that work? But once you have that expertise, if you've got an unlimited budget and you're already operating internationally, you're saying things like, we could do this over here at a fraction of the price.
Yeah. I mean, pick Latvia, pick Romania, pick Turkey, pick anywhere.
And that's exactly what's happened.
Argentina, Western Australia.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Like we can start naming the places and the geographies that get you a similar output for way less input.
Exactly. And so if you look at, you had Japanese corporations invest in the U.S. hay business. I'm going to call Zeno the Japanese government. The Japanese government invest in the U.S. hay export business. You've got the equivalent of Zeno, Nonghyup in Korea, invest. They have an operation down in Oregon, invest in the U.S. Subsequent to that, in the U.S. hay business. You had Aldara. You have each of these markets, after they reach a certain point, they look at us and say, why are we letting the Americans do this? We have the resources. Let's go to the United States. We can do it cheaper than the Americans can do it. We can do it better than the Americans can do it. Okay, so complete fallacy. Don, how do you know that that's a fallacy? Look at the history of it. They tried it. They got out. Right?
There's no more Honda hay press, right?
No. Yeah. No, there's no more Honda hay press. There's no more Sumitomo hay presses. No more KG independent hay presses. The Chinese did the same thing, right? You had Chinese entrepreneurs come over here, and we can do it better than the Americans. You had Chinese investment in U.S. hay operations. So you see this when you get this investment. They develop a certain level of expertise, or they're more comfortable with how this works, and then say, well, wait a minute, aren't they doing the same? Aren't they growing the same crap down there in South Africa? Aren't they? Can't we? Wait a minute, you need water, you need ground, you need labor, you need equipment. Is the Western United States the only place in the world where you have this? Well, no.
An irrigated desert helps.
Irrigated desert, right? So what does it take in these places that they lack? Why haven't they been competing with us all along? There's been no money to invest, right? What do they have? What's all that they have?
They have money. We haven't even mentioned Ethiopia or Egypt yet.
Exactly. Sudan.
Yep. You can see it on Google Earth, but you have to zoom in to see the pivots. They're there.
Egypt, right?
Yep.
So how come we didn't realize this?
I mean, your position here is it's a market distortion.
Yes.
Caused by a slow response to poor returns.
And it was obscured by higher and higher and higher prices, right?
Yep.
If the market, how does the market tell you, I need more of this? You're doing a great job. I need more of what you got.
The price goes up.
Well, the price goes up.
Yep.
For heaven's sakes, $400 a ton for Timothy, $350 a ton for alfalfa. What's the message? What's the message that's being sent to us? Grow more, increase your acres, get a new hay press.
I mean, maybe my cost of production is a tickle outdated, but I think 250, 270 on Timothy is somewhere in a reasonable cost of production.
Now you're getting controversial, John Paul. Now you're getting controversial.
And then alfalfa, you're just call it 200 on a cost of production for alfalfa, right?
Yeah. Let's
Ish.
call it 200. Yeah.
Ish. Plus or minus $50. Does that make you feel better?
Yeah, right. Now you covered it. Now we're in a safe range.
I mean, but that does get us in a range, so folks have some concept of, well, we're exporting millions of tons and potentially $100 a ton spread. Well, that's hundreds of millions of dollars.
So how do you lose a lot of money in a relatively short amount of time?
Well,
it's not because the minimum wage went up.
That's correct.
It's not because the price of gas went up.
Yep.
It's not just because of an exchange rate. The exchange rate maybe accelerated the losses. The exchange rate accelerated the value of buying hay in economies that, weren't based on the US dollar. A paradigm shift is what happened. We were slow to recognize it. And I think those of us that were able to adjust more quickly suffered less. And those of us that didn't take the first off ramp but kept going, it's not gonna work out well. So, Wilbur Ellis, we all know Wilbur Ellis, huge, multi-billion-dollar, privately held company, right? Hay press down in El Centro for almost 30 years, around 30 years. They exited the industry, right? They did not go bankrupt. They said, yeah, this doesn't make sense anymore.
See you later.
We're done.
Bye. Yep.
Yeah, we're done.
The delineation that I have in my mind is where that hay press is a business unit of a larger company, right? And this is what you're describing with Toyota and Subaru. Yeah, all of those other ones that have been and gone. It was a business unit that had to stand on its own two legs, right? Maybe there's an investment period where you're funding it to get started, but in the long run, it has to stand on its own two legs. And it's not too hard to look at Wilbur Ellis and say, they were doing good business analysis, and they said, no, we're like in Eastern Washington, they're a fertilizer and chemical company, right? So they do lots of other stuff.
Yep.
And that business is still here.
Yep.
So as I think about the nature of the exporter going forward, it's not going to be where the export operations are a business unit of some bigger company. Yeah. There's no appetite for that when you're losing as much money as we're talking about.
Exactly. Unless the priority is not to turn a profit.
Correct. Unless it's food security. Then the math is completely different.
Right. Or if you look at Zeno or Nonghyup, it's no. We're supporting our,
domestic farmers. Yep.
Because we're in the supply, on the supply side, supporting you, right?
Yep.
Our motivation here is not profit. It's to support Japan's dairy industry or their cattle industry or Korea's. You don't see that level of Chinese investment, but you do see the national dairies in China investing over here. So they're much more insulated from the bottom line, right? If we're not a hay trader, we're not looking to make a profit on the trade itself. We just want to ensure a stable supply.
Right. We're not speculating. Speculation is part of this conversation too, right?
It is. Yes, but it has to be rational speculation, right? And if you speculate and you're completely oblivious to market signals, you're going to crash, right? There's no way to be successful if you ignore what's going on in the market. If you look at the largest single hay processing facility in the United States, I'm going to say / the world, is Fundamonte down in Arizona.
That's a very different marketing infrastructure as well, where they made somewhat notorious investments in land when it shows up in the New York Times, water issues and those kind of things.
Yes.
They're more vertically integrated, and they're not sorting their products the way that the way that we would. They press it, put it in a can, and sort it on the back end, right?
Yes. And if you look at the creditor list for that bankruptcy filing, you'll see their name. Yeah,
Fonamani's on the list. So they were working with Anderson.
Well, Anderson was helping them market their surplus product, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what is Fondamanti going to learn? One of the things they could possibly learn from this is our motivation here is to supply the largest vertically integrated dairy plant in the world. That's why we're here. We're not here to buy and sell hay, right? We're here to source hay for ourselves, right?
There's no brokerage margin. There's just operation expenses, right?
And that's one of the things that as a hay exporter that we've recognized. There's not a trading margin in this business the way there used to be. You're not allowed to, right? The market won't allow you to. And if your business model is, I've got this margin built in for trading, and then I've got this margin built in for processing, and then maybe I've got some kind of an arbitrage margin in here, right? And traditionally, that has been the case. My point is that paradigm no longer, it's broken. And going forward, this is not a case of, this is ag, I had a bad year. Next year could be better. Oh, this is ag, I've had 2 bad years in a row. This year, I'm going to this is ag. I've had 3 bad years in a row. When do we get 4 bad years? Okay, I've got 4 bad years in a row. This year, I'm going to kill it, right? How do you dig out of that hole?
It gets tougher and tougher as you go.
I think it's not possible. The kind of hole that you could have dug under the old model, the new model will not allow you to dig out.
What you're saying is you can't cover the losses that have been incurred.
No. After a certain point, no.
I mean, this would be equivalent to a farmer losing $1 million over 3 years and then pretending that they can go to town and get a day job and make the payments to the bank and make it all okay.
It's statistically, you look at Chapter 11 filings.
Oh, I want to hear this.
10% of them restructure and are successful. So say that's just a statistic. It's not a reflection of any individual situation. The odds are stacked. The odds, though, are stacked against you. If you look at, a Chapter 11 filing, you look at assets and you look at liabilities, and when they're really close to each other, you might say that there's a greater likelihood that you could see a successful restructuring. The situation that the hay export industry is in, where you have, let's argue who was the largest exporter. Was it Anderson or was it ACX? Let's argue Anderson was the biggest, ACX was the biggest. Let's just give you whatever you want to say. The largest hay exporter in the United States has decided to put their facilities up for sale. And the number 2 has just filed Chapter 11. Or reverse that, right? The number 1 has filed Chapter 11 and the number 2 is for sale. What does that tell you, right? That we're now in a mature market and we have dramatic overcapacity, right? We have dramatic overcapacity. So you go back to Econ 101 and you say, what do these signals tell me? We're already in the middle of a dramatic correction. So there are players that have been exporters that have been in the market for 20 and 30 years. They're no longer in the market. We have the largest players are fundamentally changed. What does that say for the rest of us? Oh, it's the end of the world. The hay export market's done. U.S. isn't going to export hay anymore. Well, that's completely wrong.
I mean, that quality component still matters.
Yes, I would. I don't want to argue with you that it doesn't, but I'm here to tell you it doesn't matter as much as we hoped it would or that we said it did.
Okay.
It doesn't.
Consistency in delivery. Thinking about our excess roads and port infrastructure that we talked about last time. There's value to that. That's
on the margin.
Okay.
On the margin.
So we have production in an irrigated desert that favors high quality production. We have excess roads and infrastructure But what you're telling me is that's not enough.
It's not enough. I think that unless we look at this market with new eyes, we are doomed to continue to make mistakes. We're doomed to continue to make the kind of mistakes that have caused other players to get out of our industry, right? So when Honda got out, when Sumitomo got out, when KG got out, we all still made lots of money. Why did they get out, right? Well, they didn't meet their priorities, but not meeting their priorities didn't mean that the rest of us had to give up, right? We had different priorities. And I think that when you're the only supplier or virtually the only supplier to the world market, you can tell yourself that you have the best hay in the world.
Krone tedders and rakes are specially designed for one goal, making the cleanest green hay without causing damage to your field or crop. It's all in the tine design, which gently lift and move your crop while flotation tires lessen compaction. Krone offers the largest selection of models and range of sizes in the world, so you get what works best for your operation. Find your local Krone dealer at krone-northamerica.com.
I've been to Australia and seen feed tests and feed samples, and if you can distinguish between an oat and hay feed test and a Timothy feed test, if you had 100 samples of each and you put them into a hat, so you had 200 in the hat, and you just pulled them out at random, you couldn't sort that pile.
No.
You could not sort that pile.
So and I stood up in front of groups of people and said, we have the best hay in the world. We have the most reliable supply chain.
Yep.
You know, we've got more water, discretionary water and equipment and infrastructure than anybody.
The water does matter.
It was all true at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But those advantages, do you think that we're the only ones that know how to build roads? Do you think we're the only ones that can import cranes from, and dredge ports? And no, over time, our competitors are going to catch up. You think we're the only ones that know where to buy alfalfa seed and irrigation equipment? You can find U.S. irrigation equipment all over the world. The exact same units that that are watering our circles or watering circles in Africa and in China and
Turkey, all over the world.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
All the countries we've already mentioned, we're already making those pieces and parts. Actually, in Eastern Washington, funny enough.
So going forward, what's our advantage? Well, we still have an infrastructure. So far, we still have an infrastructure advantage, but we are competing in a price market. That's not going to change. It's going to intensify. And if we're going to make the argument, the quality argument, then it has to be true, right?
We can't be talking about 150 RFV alfalfa. We can't be talking about
John Paul, 150 RFV alfalfa. That'd be great to be able to find enough of that.
Oh,
right. So the past couple of years, we've seen tests that we've never seen before.
Low protein,
118, 112 from the basin. And not one-offs, right?
So, and the market signal there was we need more volume, and we trade plant maturity and additional tonnage for lower quality.
Well, if I can sell my really good, high-test, beautiful-looking hay for $300,
yeah, and
I'm only going to get $250 for the others, that's the wrong signal. It's the wrong signal, right? And so the market has been signaling growers that anything you put in a bale will work. Gopher holes, gopher mounds, doesn't matter. Dirt in a bale, doesn't matter. Weeds in matter, burnt hay, we can take it all. You can't.
Wrong signals,
right? And these prices sent the wrong signals. So this year we're going to export 3 million tons of hay. 3 million tons. Cut it in half. 1.5 million tons off the West Coast. That's still dramatic. That's still going to support, ag communities in California, Oregon, Washington, Utah, and Arizona. You're not going to have the same number of hay presses. Don, how do you know that? Oh, well, the largest hay press manufacturer in the world went what?
Bankrupt.
Bankrupt. There's a market signal for you. What percent overcapacity do we have of presses? If you were to argue we have 50% more presses than we need, I don't think you get an argument. So we're not going to grow our capacity here. And if you talk to some people, used hay presses from the United States, they're not just going to other places in the United States.
Oh, I mean, this is the best thing that we could do for the hay industry.
Right.
It is an oxygen lance. Like, just start cutting.
Yeah.
I'm not condoning destruction of property.
Right.
I'm saying those assets do have a diminished value.
Yes, but you can take it apart, stuff it in a couple of 40-foot containers and send it to Australia. You can send it to South Africa. You can send it to Turkey. You can
Sudan. Actually, yeah. we've seen a press move from Washington to Sudan already. They did it.
So, yeah. I mean, eventually what's going to happen? So you say to the U.S. farmer and you say to the U.S. exporter, and by U.S. exporter, I mean regular people, right? Regular people, regular guys. Can you not compete? Can you not compete with these other countries? Yeah, of course I can. Can you not outwork them? Can you not read the market equally as good? Yeah. Are you willing to work for $2 an hour? No. I'm going to be more efficient. I'm going to be more efficient. This is not the death knell of the U.S. hay export industry by any means, but it's the end of an era. We have to, we need to do a forensic autopsy here and say on our industry.
Of the industry. Yep.
And say, okay, where did we go wrong? Right? Where did we go wrong? What mistakes did we make? Well, there's been a huge overinvestment in press capacity.
Yep.
Some people overpaid for hay. They overpaid for hay. And the rest of us followed along and said, I need 35,000 ton per press. Otherwise, it doesn't pencil out, right? And
it's a factory that you have to keep going to make it a performing asset.
You say to your hay buyers, each one of you guys, you got to come back here with 20,000 ton or I don't need you. What facilitated all this? This is the problem, and the solution is obvious. You had an industry that was growing, that was obviously objectively profitable, and you had lenders saying, do you want to buy another press? You want to buy another press? The first hay press I bought brand new was $300,000. Before Hunterwood went broke, what was a new hay press? It was $2 million. They did the same job. Sorry, they did the same thing, right? You're not going to have banks lending to hay exporters the way they have, for the past.
There's very little competition in the lending space right now. And I mean, lenders are not going out and competing for everyone's business the way that they would have 5 years ago. Now, there's still competition in the space, of course, but it's changed. It's different.
So you tell me knowing the first or second largest hay exporter in the United States is for sale. The first or second largest hay exporter in the United States just filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy. I defy any hay exporter to truthfully say they've made money over the past 5 years. The signals, the objective signals you get from everybody just doesn't suggest that. When we're all selling equipment, we've all resized. If you take even a fraction of the stories about money that's owed to farmers from hay exporters at face value, there's a lot more to this iceberg below the waterline.
Not picking on Anderson, because it's a normal market structure to go out and contract with growers. So this fact that they owe growers money is actually completely normal and completely expected.
If you owe money for 2022 crop and 2023 crop and 2024 crop, how are you going to pay that back?
It doesn't.
Right?
It's too many years of consecutive losses, is what you're saying.
I don't. I mean, you don't want to see anybody. You don't. Growers are in their ability to recover from stuff like this.
As we think about what lenders look at, it's that capacity to withstand risk.
Yeah.
And I mean, I worked for a lender for 6 years. I have very little sympathy for them. Not that they didn't do what they thought was right at the time, but they're participating in a risk game.
Yeah.
They get rewarded. They get paid for risk. That's what they do.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're participants in this just the same. They have to change too. So we're looking at top to bottom. Everything is changing in this marketplace.
Yes, exactly. So we built this bubble, right? I'm going to say, hey, exporters, we're to blame. We're to blame for this, right? Not the grower, not the customer, the overseas customer. It's the hay exporters. We built this bubble. The bubble burst, and you could say the bubble burst the day before Thanksgiving. That would be wrong, right? It was a slow burst, right? We didn't recognize it. So what fueled this bubble? Lending fueled the bubble. Outside investment. So when governments start sticking money into your industry, you're going to build a bubble, right? Because they're not investing because the return is good. They have some other priority, right? And they're not driven by the same, or they're not constrained by the same financial strictures that the rest of us are. And then unfortunately, growers fueled it by. So what did we say? I'll offer you $400 for your Timothy. What are you supposed to say?
When do you pay me? Oh,
exactly.
They didn't hold them to high standards of timing and payment, and they could have been more restrictive.
When there are farmers that are owed $500,000, $1 million, more than $1 million, it wasn't the growers. It wasn't the growers that pulled the plug and to force this filing. It was the bank, right? It was Farm Credit. So
again, not secret.
No, it's not a secret. That's
public
that's
records. Yep.
Yeah. So going forward, you're not going to have this money floating around. No rational player, right? What farmer now is going to say, "Oh, you owe me $1 million from last year. I'll sell you my hay this year. That's fine. Just pay me when you can. Let me put you on a payment program. I'll send you a check every month." Okay, so what? I got to wait 6 years to get paid? Banks don't have that kind of patience. Growers do. Going forward, I don't see banks falling over themselves to lend money to a hay exporter. I don't see. So we've had Japanese money come into our industry, Korean money come into our industry, Chinese money come into our industry, and Arab money come into our industry. All those investments did not work out the way they thought it would. And so, one by one, with a couple of small exceptions, they all pulled the plug. Well, who's next? Who's coming to the United States to invest in the hay export industry now?
Your implication is the Japanese tried it, the Koreans tried it, the Chinese tried it, the Saudis tried it, the Emiratis tried it.
Who's next? Right?
There's nobody.
So that's not coming.
There's no obvious next in line, right? There's no huge demand center that needs it next.
So banks are not. They're not going to line up and say, "Hey, we just had this shakeout. This is going to be wildly profitable again. Let's start lending to hay exporters." It'll happen 5 years from now or 10 years from now or whenever they forget. And then our growers, you've got, okay, so obviously if you're a big grower and you can be patient on getting paid, you can afford to do that. I think any grower now, after seeing what's happened and what is going to happen here in the next couple of weeks and months, growers, they've got to be very careful with what they do. So now suddenly we have an injection of rationality into our market that hasn't existed for decades. Is the average price of hay going to go down? Yeah, it is. It is. It's going to go down.
It already has.
Yeah. And it's not going to pop back. It's not going to pop back up again. Right. Yep. It's going to be the domestic market is going to define the hay price, even in our states that rely on the export market, because our customers are no longer willing or able to compete with the U.S. dairies for hay. It's like, no, can't pay that.
Although
can't do it.
The U.S. dairies, separate political rant, ethanol ruined the dairy feed market domestically. So
what's a farmer to do? Farmers have to be what historically they have been. They're entrepreneurs. They might not say they are. They're entrepreneurs. And they have to maximize whatever advantage that they have. They have to be as efficient as they could possibly be, and they have to be incredibly astute when it comes to selling their crops. And, it has always impressed me that the time, the effort, and the risk that a grower puts into growing a crop, the cavalier, almost cavalier way in which they sell their hay. I got 6 pickups. What's your price? What's your price? What's your price? Some growers text me your price. I don't have time to meet with you. Just text me your number. So they get the number, whatever the highest number is. I sit on I-90. I'm 30 seconds from the interchange. You know how many growers, basin growers or Idaho growers, or even Ellensburg growers will come by before they sell you their hay?
Your argument suggests that relationships still matter.
Yes, they've always mattered. We've had the luxury of thinking nobody's going anywhere. Everybody's good for, we've had hay exporters go bankrupt before. We have.
Yeah.
It's not unknown. So, shame on us for not recognizing it is a possibility. But the idea that the biggest, oldest players could be in trouble, that is a new thought. That is a novel understanding. But going forward, a grower needs to know who he's dealing with. And this question, how am I going to get paid? Yeah, absolutely. The question growers should be asking is, how are you getting paid? Because, some of these issues come from non-payment to the exporter, because you can sell a hell of a lot of hay if you sell on open account. You just ship that hay over to China and tell them, here's my bank account number, send me the money when it gets there. And I can tell you, you're not getting all your money. You are not getting all your money. I don't care who you are.
That sounds like the voice of experience.
No, because I've understood that. And we are so strict. You send me the money in advance. What if nobody wants the money in advance? Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I know we're difficult. But you want this hay? Send me the money in advance or open a letter of credit. We got 2 possibilities.
Is this what the growers should be saying to the exporters?
Yeah, they really should. How much is your hay bond? How many times does a grower ask the guy that's buying their hay, how much is your bond?
Do we have this discussion about the Washington State Department of Agricultural bonds being so insufficient that it's not even funny?
Yeah, but the reality is you couldn't get a bond.
Right.
You could not get a bond for the amount that you need to have, especially after this.
I mean, you're talking in $30,000 or 30,000 ton increments, and we're talking we're just going to use $300 a ton for easy math. That's a $9 million per press cash flow requirement. The bond requirements don't go that high.
No, they don't. And but
per
see,
press.
the premise here is that if you've got, I don't want to say a bad player, but if you've got a situation where you need to use that bond, you're using it within 30 days, right? For any one player to buy enough hay to exceed the value of their bond, you could come up with a scenario that, that's not, on the whole, that's not possible. But what farmers don't do that. These guys that are owed money, they're not owed money from the last 30 days.
It's the last 3 years.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, there's still somebody out there that has 2022 hay in inventory that is theoretically under contract.
Well, there are people that sold their hay in 2022 and the exporter shipped the hay in 2022 and hasn't paid the grower, right? You got to know who you're selling to.
It almost seems an impossibility, though, because we just talked about how Anderson wasn't even on the list for bankruptcy the day that they filed, right? So there is a certain impossibility there, and that suggests that the purchasing habits of the market participants need to change.
Well, look at the history of the line of credit that was not renewed. It was 30 million, then 25 million, then 20 million, right? So the bank was saying, wait a minute.
Yep, pumping the brakes.
Yeah. To the rest of us, you could see something was going on there because, the market presence was diminished and they were less aggressive. But if I'm a grower and I say, look, alfalfa or Timothy, it's part of my rotation. I don't need 8 circles to make it work, but I do need 2. I'm not selling it to a dairy. There's, there's more hay out there. I can't accept that kind of price. I'm not selling it to a feedlot. I'm not selling it to the west side. I'm not dealing with guys, who want a ton here and a ton there. I need to sell it to a hay exporter. How do I do that? Do I get my money up front? Yeah, good luck with that. Good luck with that. I'm just saying good luck with that, because what we just talked about was, where is this money that's going to cash flow all this stuff? So the banks are going to pull back.
They're tightening credit conditions.
Absolutely.
We know they're tightening credit conditions now.
Do you want to deal with a big multinational who's got endless amounts of money? That's called, that's ACX, that's Zeno. Can we all sell to Zeno? No, because Zeno's not growing. I mean, they're doing what they wanted to do. They've achieved the goals that they set for themselves. They're comfortable where they are. Can we all sell to Agrex, owned by Mitsubishi? No. So at some point, you got to figure out a way that you're going to sell to a locally owned U.S. regular guy hay exporter.
Yep.
Right? Because the multi-billion-dollar corporations are not there. The big Arab money's not here anymore. Japanese money's come and gone. Korean money never got off the ground. The Chinese, you want to get screwed, go and experiment with that.
Or be subject to some serious trade wars
Yes,
that have been disrupting the market for some time too. That is part of this conversation.
Yes.
But what you're saying is it's a smaller part of this conversation. And I would make that argument too, is the tariffs and trade war stuff is a part, but not the problem. Yeah.
No, I would say there's no one single problem. And if you put a gun to my head and said, no, you got to name one, I would go macro and say, we've been ignoring signals. We've been ignoring signals. And if you timed it just right, it's like the stock market. We're building a bubble. There's going to be a correction. Yeah. But until the correction, there's a lot of money to be made. Can you get out in time? So if you sold your hay for $400 a ton and you got paid, you made absolutely the right decision for your farm. And that was your responsibility. Good job. If you sold your hay for $400 and have yet to be paid, that was not the right decision. That was not the right decision. And I think, the industry going forward, cut the export volume in half, which I think, overly dramatic, but cut it in half. It's still way bigger than it was when it got started.
That's true. We didn't hit that 1 million ton export mark until the 90s.
Hey, they were popping corks then at 1 million, and they were popping corks at 2 million, and we got to 4 million and treated it like, oh yeah, that's
no big deal.
Yeah, no, we're the hay kings, we don't have any We don't have any competition.
Right.
Now we do. So we're kind of like Detroit before imported cars.
Oh, what a parallel.
I was saying before, we sit and Washington State hay growers, right? Mm-hmm. Look at what's the agenda been the past couple of years, right?
Okay, we're going to have this open and frank conversation because you can't fix stuff if you don't talk about it. The agenda has been to run variety trials, which I do value, in partnership with a university, and to put on a hay show.
Yeah, put on a hay show as long as you have exhibitors.
Right.
Right.
We're actually not doing terrible at that. We have wonderful folks that do a really good job putting on it, but that's not the highest and best use of a trade organization, right?
No,
an industry trade organization.
So this situation has been developing for the past couple of years. Some growers are just really waking up to the reality, Thanksgiving Day, that the world has been turned upside down. How the hell did this happen? And I didn't realize it. What's been going on here? We've been getting these signals, and as an industry, we're not hay growers, we're part of the Washington State Hay Growers Association, but as an industry, how is the industry been keeping itself abreast of these very dramatic changes in the competitive environment in the market, right? And going forward, if you're an industry organization, how are you going to educate your members? How are you going to help protect your members? How are you going to help your membership prepare for whatever this new market situation is? What are you doing? You know, the grower that's out there that's spending 18 hours a day at harvest, you know, in the seat of a tractor, he doesn't have time to read the Wall Street Journal, right? He doesn't have time to educate himself on the nuances of how do you get paid on an export shipment, and what's a letter of credit, and what kind of credit terms are normal. We've got, how does a hay bond work? How much time do I have? What's a contract? You know, what really, the pieces of paper that hay exporters circulate out there, we treat them, I mean,
known for greater throughput even in the heaviest crops, Krone Big Packs are the world's fastest large balers. With proven bale quality and increased density over other brands, Krone Big Pack balers are the right choice for optimized productivity. Talk with your local dealer to learn more about Krone machines, built for generations.
My favorite is when the exporter shows up with a contract and you just take it on face value. You talk about the things that matter, the shipment dates and the price and the exact bale counts for your inventory system. And then what if something goes wrong? Is the part that's always...
that's line 20, that's line 23. Didn't you read it?
Right. I have to sue you in your neck of the woods. The loser pays all the fees. Like, it's just boilerplate stuff that we never intend to use. And it's a problem.
Yeah, it is a problem.
It's a problem because we're not starting with, okay, let's think through the worst case scenario and make sure that we're going to have a good relationship on the backside if everything goes south.
So, you know, by the same, their attitude is, you bought it, it's yours. It's got dirt in it. I can't export it. It's got wheat in it. I can't export it. You know, it's burnt. Well, you should have known that. Really.
Inside that wrap stack. Sure.
How? You know, we don't know that. So yeah, you asked before, or you raised the rhetorical question, do relationships count? Yeah, they count. If as exporters, we would take a minute here and stop competing with each other and talk to growers realistically and say, yeah, high moisture hay, can't do anything with it. Well, you took it last year. Yeah. Who did you sell it to? Were they a real company or were they a government? You know, did they just ship it into this bottomless hole that doesn't exist anymore? Because it doesn't, right? Some of the hay that's been bought and sold, it was never right. It never worked. And growers don't get that message, right? They don't understand. We talk about quality. Growers talk about quality. Yeah. Well, what are you talking about again? RFV, CP? Yeah, of course. Yeah. But there's more to it than that, right? Kosher. High quality hay with kosher. High quality hay full of water grass. High quality hay that the inside of that 3x4 is yellow and smells rank. The biggest alfalfa market volume wise is China. That's all big bales. It's all big bales. Nobody knows what the hell's going on inside that bale until it gets cut open, right?
Oh, and then sometimes it doesn't even get cut open. It just gets double pressed and the sleeve put around it and off it goes.
No, that's if it goes in a sleeve, it doesn't get cut open.
Yep.
You know, some presses just take that bale and double compress it. No one ever sees the inside. If it's going as a small bale, that bale gets sliced up and we get to look inside of it. And that's when it's, oh my gosh, you know, it looks beautiful. Those bales look beautiful. Nice and green. Great leaf retention because it was high moisture, you know.
Right.
But going forward, you know, as a hay export industry, we're going to have to work a lot closer with growers, and growers are going to have to know a lot more about the market, because the question now is, you know, do I sell to exporter A or do I sell to exporter B? It's not that simple. Right? Where's my hay going, really? And what are they looking for? And if I want exporter A and exporter B to be interested in my hay, okay, I know now it's got to be priced competitively, but then there are other elements that I got to be paying attention to. And we have to outcompete those guys in Romania or in South Africa or in Egypt or in Sudan or Ethiopia or Spain or Australia. We have to outcompete them. And if you don't want to compete on price, what's left to you?
Quality.
Got to compete on quality.
Quality
right?
is the only.
And the truth is, it's going to be some combination of those. And so, going forward, this is not the end of the hay export industry by any means. We're going to go through a restructuring. The whole industry is. It's in the process. It didn't start on Thanksgiving Day. We, as exporters, if we are going to survive, and if we're a regular private American family-owned business, we have to rethink our business model and figure out, okay, how am I going to compete? Not, in Washington, we used to compete with California on alfalfa, and we used to compete with Canada on Timothy. And they were our enemies. As hay exporters in Washington State, we all competed with each other. I wouldn't say we viewed each other as enemies, but we were certainly competitors. And now, whether we're an exporter or a farmer, if we're U.S. owned, we need to recognize we're competing not with California. Of course we are, right? But we're competing with countries in Africa, with countries in South America, with countries in Europe. I don't know if I told you this story. We had a farmer from Russia come by last year.
No, I haven't heard this story.
From Russia.
I want to know where in
Russia.
I want to know the production region in Russia.
He had beautiful hay. He showed us some hay tests. He was here to look at a hay press.
Right.
Right, to buy a brand new hay press. And the manufacturer gave him, a list of names. These are people with my hay press. You go visit with them. So he stopped by and he said that he was getting $80 a ton for his hay. He showed us some tests. It was, 180 RFV, 190 RFV, showed us pictures, beautiful hay. He was in the middle of nowhere.
And you mean the middle of nowhere.
I mean the middle of nowhere, yeah. Right? And Aldara said to him, we'll buy your hay. You get your hay to us, we'll buy your hay. So he crunched the numbers, he could truck it to them.
Oh, right. Because there's actually roads that go all the way.
And, I don't know, they were going to pay him $250 a ton, whatever it was. It was a dramatic increase from what he was getting for his hay. You could see how the wheels were turning, and that's what we're up against. So our customers in Japan, suddenly they're telling you that they're going to Spain. They're going to Italy, right? They're buying ryegrass out of Italy. They're buying alfalfa out of Spain. And, we recognize that's going on. And you say to them, yeah, buy all you want. When you're done, you still have to come back to the United States, right? With all due respect. I hope that works out for you.
It used to be, just saying, let's just call it 2020, the U.S. was half of the global hay trade. And then everybody else made up the rest of it. And that was 1 million tons from Australia and 1 million tons from Spain. Pushing 4 million tons from the U.S. So there was another 2 million tons distributed throughout Canada and the rest of the world. 500,000 tons from Canada. Yeah.
We're back to a place where demand continues to grow. It does, right? There's more mouths to feed today than there were yesterday, blah, blah, blah. What we haven't had to contend with is, as far as hay goes, the supply is growing now, right? Mm-hmm. The supply of exportable hay is growing now. And the supply is going to grow faster than demand, and it's going to come at the expense of U.S. capacity, of U.S. supply. Every ton of hay that Aldara gets out of Romania is a ton of hay that Aldara doesn't have to source in the United States. Oh, Don, how do you know that? Right? They want to sell their U.S. facilities. You tell me how important we are to them now if they want to sell them. Will they still buy hay from the United States? Yeah, they will. They will. But they don't have to own hay presses, right? And they don't have to drive the market up. Because somebody in Abu Dhabi is saying, here's the price of our Romanian product. Here's the price of our Spanish product. Here's the price of our South African product. Now, tell me again, Ellensburg. Tell me again, LA, how much you want to charge me for your hay? Well, it's our hay. It's our hay. What do you mean your hay? No. You want to sell your U.S. hay, right, to corporate, and corporate can buy it cheaper somewhere else, right? So That's that thought process. It shouldn't be alien to anybody. Whether you're buying fuel or fertilizer or seed, shop around. These are great guys. They're wonderful, but their price for the same thing is a little bit too high. So I'm going to the other side of town and getting it. And that's what these multinationals are in a position to do. And that's what they're supposed to do. That's their job, right? Our job is to recognize that's what's going on and say to ourselves, Basin farmer, Idaho farmer, Ellensburg farmer, can you compete with those guys in Spain? Can you compete with those guys in Romania? Can you compete with those guys in South Africa? Or are you going to throw your hands up and say, no, we're beaten. The dollar's too strong. I can't do it. I just can't do it. I'm sorry. That's not our way. Our way is to say, okay, it's going to be a challenge. Let's figure this out. I got to be more efficient. I got to be smarter. How much do you have penciled into your budget for bad debt? Do a better job when you sell your product so you don't have any bad debt, right? That's profit to you, right? Cash flow.
Businesses die on cash flow. It is that simple. Balance sheets do not matter. Cash flow matters.
Exactly. And well, yes. And that's what we're seeing. That's what we saw the day before Thanksgiving. And that's suddenly what we're going to see. There's going to be this cascading ripple effect. If I'm a grower and I sold my hay to Anderson and it's tied up in that Chapter 11 now, and I sold my hay to another exporter who owes me money, I can call Anderson all I want.
Right? It isn't going to change anything because
nothing's going to change.
That has to be arbitrated by the court and a committee of creditors.
Exactly.
Yep.
So if I have a bank payment at the end of the year or the first of next year, what am I doing? I'm looking at those other guys that owe me money and saying, I need your money now.
And
I'm not getting that big December 1st, December 15th or December 30th check from Anderson, because you're not. It's not coming, right? It takes longer than that to resolve. And so, there's going to be this ongoing cascading effect. And it's to your point, it's all driven by cash flow. And to be honest with you, as exporters, we've never been in a position as during the regular course of business to say to some of our customers, you want this hay? Because they want to lock up hay for the next 12 months. It's the reservation. I want to reserve this hay. We all deal with that. So this money that farmers have been getting as down payments, right? Most of that money was bank money. It wasn't from the customer. So that bank money dries up. As a normal small businessman, you have working capital, but you don't have enough working capital to tie up 20, 30, 40, 50,000 ton of hay at 90% down.
Yeah. I mean, we just talked about the millions of dollars that it takes to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you can see where there has to be a whole lot more understanding between growers, exporters, and customers, because this is a market. It will figure out a way to work itself out. It will, right? Yeah. The question is, who are the players going to be? Who's going to get it figured out in time? And then how is it going to work? For those that can figure it out, for those hay importers in Japan, Korea, China that figure it out, they're going to be successful. For that hay exporter who can figure it out, they're going to be successful. To that hay grower that can figure it out, he'll be successful. The question is, what's it going to take for us to figure it out? I don't know exactly what the answer to that is, but I know that it's going to require growers to understand more about their market and who they're dealing with.
How does that happen? I mean, you asked a question about the hay growers, and if we turn our attentions to trade missions, if we turn our attentions to, we see the Spaniards, the Italians, the Australians, they're going to the trade shows in South Korea and Japan and actively marketing their product. We've sat on our laurels for a long time and not done that. Now, that's a very small portion of a bigger picture solution.
But that's at the selling side.
Yes.
Right? We're not worried about selling right now. We're worried about buying right now. We're worried or selling from the farmer's perspective.
Yep.
So, okay, great, exporter. You went to that trade show and you've got this customer in Korea. How am I, the grower, going to get paid?
What if it's the grower, not the exporter, going on those trade missions? Does that change the nature of that relationship where it increases the understanding of the grower in the States of the market, like that. They learn about the market condition that you're working in, that the exporter is working in.
Absolutely. But it's a question of time, expense,
Yes.
And scale.
The only thing I would argue is it's a longer term
Yes.
vision for the industry. There is
Yes.
nothing that fixes our industry right now except
No.
like I'm going to use the words pain and suffering.
Oh, we've got that.
We're already I'm going to say we just entered the fourth inning of this baseball game.
It depends on who you are.
Right?
Depends on who you are, right?
But as an industry, I think we're only in the fourth inning of maybe the fifth inning of the correction.
If you're an exporter,
This is like the seventh or eighth inning. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're a grower, it's like there's still a lot of change that has to happen.
Yes, exactly.
Need your hay dried down faster without leaf loss? Krone Tedders offer the best solution by getting your crop off the field faster. Available in both trailed models and drawbar hitches with the widest range of sizes. All Krone Tedders feature flotation tires and specially engineered tines to lift the crop and distribute it evenly across the swath. Less ash and greener hay? That's the Krone way. Learn more at krone-northamerica.com.
Hay growers as an industry, if they want to see a way forward in terms of hay exports, they got to understand more about this export process. They need to understand what it is that makes their product competitive. They're going to get a crash course now in this hasn't worked, right? What looked like it worked.
Or what did work for 30, 40 years.
Oh, 50 years. Yeah, it did work.
50 years.
Right. But if you look at 2022, if you're a hay grower and you got paid $400 for your Timothy and $300 plus for your alfalfa,
That's down for a while.
That was a great year.
Yep.
That was fantastic. When can that happen again? What you didn't realize was that what you were hearing was the death knell of the U.S. hay export industry, right? Because if you look at this Chapter 11 filing forensically, go back to 2022. I think there were decisions made back then that almost made this result inevitable. Now, all of us got a wake-up call, 2023. Some of us responded in a way that ensured our survival, and some of us didn't. And some of us, the reckoning still hasn't come. Right.
And what you're talking about there is a reckoning and writing down inventories, that because that value of the inventory is not what it was when it was purchased in 22, 23, 24, 25.
Or it's debts to growers.
Yep.
The hay's long gone.
Yep.
You have no collateral.
Yep.
You don't even have a receivable, right? It's just a loss. And you're hoping against hope that you're going to make $100 a ton on your 2026 hay, and it's going to pay for the $100 a ton that you lost on your 2022 or 2023 hay, and it's not going to happen.
Yeah, but if you didn't get paid for your 22 or 23 hay.
Oh, I'm saying the exporters hoping.
Oh, I got you. No, if the grower didn't get paid for their 22 or 23 hay, this is why we had to have some like concept of cost of production to have that maybe 250 number or 200 number. Because that's actually what the loss is going to be.
Yeah.
Your loss is your cost of production.
Yes.
So I'm going to stop here as an ag economist and say, you have to know your cost of production. I yelled it into the microphone to get everybody's attention.
No, absolutely.
That's part of this maturing and reckoning.
Oh yeah, if you don't know your cost of production, you're playing poker and you're never looking at your cards.
Yep.
You're just betting.
Yeah.
You're just betting that the other guy folds and you never have to show your cards, right? It's the same thing as an exporter, It's like I'm willing to do it for nothing, but I got to know what for nothing is.
Mm-hmm. I really enjoy, I buy and resell a small portion of hay, mostly because we've been in drought and I haven't had enough to supply my usual customers. I really like doing that because then I actually have some concept of what it actually costs me. Here's the farm management guy saying it's tough with hay because of the multiple cuttings, because of the lack of record keeping capacity in our industry. is absolutely inexcusable. I actually had this conversation this morning. I had a grower ask me how to do inventory.
Wow.
He's never done it. He's never kept a hay inventory.
Wow.
And really it was a financial discussion because we were talking about his balance sheet and actually how to create and structure a balance sheet. There's no black magic to it. You should have seen his eyes light up when he figured out that his inventory of herbicides and fertilizer should be on his balance sheet.
Wow.
Because he had more money than he thought he did, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of these types of conversations that are happening and need to happen as fast as possible.
So what should an industry organization be doing? It should be ringing this bell really loud, right? These are the things you got to do. You got to do this. You want to survive?
We're here.
You
We're doing it.
this. Yeah.
I mean, I think this is, not to toot the horn of the Hay Kings podcast, but this is what we're doing. If you're listening to this, this is a call to action to do something.
Yeah. Well, and we don't have the luxury, whether you're a hay exporter or a hay grower, we no longer have the luxury of saying, I'm making money over here. If I'm not paying attention over there, if my cost of production's out of control here, I'll more than make up for it, on something else. We don't have that luxury. Whether it's alfalfa or Timothy hay or grass straw, we don't have that. We no longer have that luxury. Those margins are not there, right? If you're making $20 a ton as a trading margin, you can say to yourself, I can overpay for this hay by $20 before I lose any money. I traded it for nothing.
I'm willing to work for free.
In the old days, you used to say, what's the worst case scenario?
Sure.
I paid $280 for it. I penciled in $20 for myself. I got to sell it for $260. Okay, what's the worst case scenario? I did it for nothing. All right. You got a pickup truck and gas and a hay buyer's salary, and that's one field. Okay, we learned from that. Don't make that mistake again. The market's really not there. But if you're not making $20 a ton, you better be grading really carefully. When you think the hay's worth $260 and in reality it's worth $220, you're trading it for nothing. You're pressing it for nothing. You're not getting paid to truck it to the port, right? Right. I mean, you should have not bought that hay. And you would have been money ahead by paying your production guys to come and paint the fence. You would have been money ahead and you would have had a painted fence. So the same way, if you want to survive as a hay exporter in the 2026, 27, 28, markets, you have to have a handle on everything. You have to know, your eyes have to be wide open. You have to know what you're doing. You have to know what risk you're taking. And if you're a hay farmer who's selling to a hay exporter, you need to know the same things. And shame on you if you don't. And it's not just shame on you. This is not the last bankruptcy in our industry. It's not.
I mean, we could argue that Hunterwood was the first. And there have been a couple of others since then. Mm-hmm. But this is the first. This is the one that we're going to remember.
Yeah. And there are guys, as a hay exporter, you don't have to go bankrupt to get out of the business, right? You don't. You just say, hey, it's been nice. It's been a great ride.
We're closing the
doors. Thank you very much. We're done, right? Yep. And we saw that in California. I think we're going to see that in Washington.
Oh, we have. We've seen it with. There's been a couple of others, not in Washington, that have closed, but they're more inland exporters that face more freight. Frankly, is going to be the difference, right? The market boundary is going to move closer to the coast. Mm-hmm. Am I too far? The market boundary is going to move closer to the coast because the margins. Right. You're saying the margins aren't there.
No.
So you can't pay any extra for freight. So we've seen some of those exits already.
Yeah, and we're going to see fewer trucks on the road, right? Yep. We're going to see trucking costs go up. That's yes.
Yep.
As an industry, Washington State hay growers should be a lot more interested in what's going on at the ports, right? That's something that they don't have the luxury. They don't have the luxury of ignoring. We have Eastern Washington. Whether you're if you're in ag at all, you need to be making a lot more. Well, You need to be making noise in Olympia saying these things have to be efficient. If I have to run an efficient ag operation in order to survive in this international market, then these transportation links that are taxpayer funded that I support, they also have to be world class. Because if you're a Washington State hay grower to compete in the export market in the future, you have to be world class.
Yep.
World class, right?
Yeah,
that's who
truly.
That's who we're competing against, right?
I do want to give out a shout out really quick to Louis Terden, who is the representative from the Northwest Seaport Alliance that has a seat on our hay growers board. But maybe what we're not doing is getting that knowledge out to our grower base well enough. The grower base is what matters, not the guys putting on the hay show, right?
Right, and it's our political leaders that need to hear from us. This is a Washington State asset.
Yep.
And it's not working for Eastern Washington.
I do want to zoom out just a little bit to finish off this conversation. This has been such a fantastic conversation. This isn't just a hay problem.
No.
This is potato processors closing. This is tree fruit processors closing. This is feed mills closing. This is a big problem. Barley malters, I mean, the list is actually pretty long.
But why, right? Everybody that you just listed, their product is going into somebody's mouth, right? And there are more mouths every day, right? And there are higher and higher standards of living, right? We don't talk about third world, Yeah, I mean,
the first thing that truly, when somebody starts to accumulate any amount of wealth, I mean, we're talking going from that $1 a day to $10 a day kind of lifestyle, the first thing they buy is protein.
Right. So it's not that demand is diminishing, right? It's that supply is increasing and we have competition where in areas where we're not used to having competition. And what do? You give up or you outcompete, right? So I'm sorry, we're Americans. We don't give up. We outcompete. We do it smarter. We already work hard. Maybe we have to work a little harder, but we definitely have to work smarter.
And in a different way. Yeah, it's the working smarter.
Yeah,
we have to work in a little different way. Absolutely.
Yeah, and what business can afford not to get paid?
None of them.
Right? You work as hard as you want. You work as smart as you want. If you don't get paid, you're going to go out of business. You got to get paid. So we have to figure that part out. Bankruptcy in any industry, let alone on the scale that we're talking in what is really a small industry, is going to have devastating implications. I'm not going to shed a tear for any bank or any finance company.
They're rewarded for risk all the time.
And they're making their money somewhere else.
It's a fair game. Yep.
Employees, growers, small vendors, some of this stuff.
This goes back to they're our friends and neighbors. These are real people.
Yeah, exactly. I know this feeling personally. To work last year for nothing, to get up every day and go through that for nothing.
You worked for nothing? You're doing great. I paid to work.
That's the thing that absolutely kills you. I said before, we're willing to do it for nothing. But when you realize that you're
paying to work
enormous amounts of money for the privilege of working for nothing, And I don't mean to make light of any of this. I don't mean to make light of it because it's deadly serious stuff.
I mean, these are realizations that you and I are working through personally on our own, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're not immune to. We're market participants.
Looking to make a lighter footprint across your fields? Run Krone rakes. Available in working widths from 12.3 to 15.1 for single rakes and 18.8 all the way up to 62.4 feet in the twin and four rotor versions. Choose from multiple sizes and configurations to sweep across your field, gently lifting the crop into clean and boxy windrows. Ideal for the hungriest baler or chopper. Learn more at www.krone-northamerica.com.
And, the conclusion you reach, so we recognized things were changing a couple years ago. Things were changing. And to my mind, it wasn't a one-off. The paradigm was shifting. Like I said before, we sit on I-90, right?
Very visible. If you've driven through Ellensburg on I-90,
Yep.
you could have thrown a rock and hit Don's.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you get people that used to drive past there and you got 30,000 ton of hay stacked out there. The conclusion there is, oh, business must be good, right?
Mm-hmm. This is where we address the rumors that Wesco's going out of business every week.
Yeah. So here's
your opportunity, Don. Give it to us straight.
So many, a hay buyer or an employee comes, she says, hey, I just talked to so-and-so and, this grower says they drove past Wesco. There's no hay. Wesco's going out of business. And it was like, okay, we are not going out of business. And the reason we're not, or part of that calculation there is there's no hay sitting out there.
That's a good thing.
That's an awesome thing, right? Because when you see hay sitting there, it's like you can ask yourself the question, what did they pay for that hay? And what can they sell that hay for? And I can tell you in 2022, it was $20 a ton less than we paid for it. $50 a ton less than we paid for it. $100 a ton less than we paid for it. I can go higher and not exaggerate. When we were growing our business, we borrowed money from the bank. We haven't borrowed money from the bank in 4 years. When we started our business, we got loans to buy equipment. We have no equipment loans. I don't owe anybody a nickel. No one can put us out of business because I don't owe anybody anything, right? And I don't sell on credit. I'm a pain in the ass. If you want to buy hay from me, you got to pay me for it. And we can afford to pay growers 7 days across the scale. Why 7 days, Don? Well, I got to get the manifests, right?
Yeah, it takes time. There's some operational stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to process it, right? And can you scale up a business on that basis? It's really hard. The only way you can do it is if you've been in business for a while, everything's paid for. You start out with a pile of money and pay everything cash, and you sit there and say, I have no debt. I'm going to be in the hay business, and I got a couple $1 million in operating capital, and I don't see those people.
Right. It doesn't.
No, I don't see those.
It's not there anymore. Yeah.
I don't see those people. So, as far as growers go, they have to have a different mindset. I need 90% down, and I got 5,000 ton of hay. I need 90% down. Grower, you're not wrong. But how is that going to work? Just think it through. You're in a negotiation. Put yourself in the other person's position. What's 90% of $250 a ton times 5,000 tons? Where's that money coming from? Okay, there's no bank.
What I just heard you say is you're not willing to go borrow it to fund that. So that negotiation just has to be different.
And I would say that if you're in our business, after,
Let's say the dust settles.
After the dust settles, what bank is going to lend you money to go out and buy hay to export? Farm credit, the biggest, the oldest, the most stable, the most reliable. Chapter 11. I can say our company has been exporting since 1971. It's Anderson, Wardrew, Wesco. We got as long a track record as anybody. I cannot imagine a bank coming up to us the way they have in the past and saying, here's $10 million to go buy hay. We think it's a great investment. There's no risk to us, right? And we'll lend it to you at 3%.
Yeah, that ain't happening. But the exercise you just did was putting yourself in a banker's position, right? This is part of that maturity is putting yourself in somebody else's position and trying to figure out how they're making money and how to interact with them in that exchange.
Yes. And growers probably understand how banks work better than and I don't think they understand that well, but they probably understand that better than they understand how exporters work.
Right.
Because their experience, the past 10, 15, 20 years has been, there's mountains of money and it's just gushing all, I just got to stand in line and I'm going to get these big advance checks and who cares how those guys make it work? They've always made it work. I think what we're seeing now is it hasn't worked. Pick your year. I'm saying it. I know it didn't work for anybody in 2022 or since, right? I think it started not to work before then. It hasn't worked. And that signal didn't get to growers. So this comes as a bigger shock to them than it comes to those of us that are exporters. Granted, it was a shock for Anderson to file Chapter 11. Internally, you know, when you look at the competitive landscape, it's always, well, what about that guy? You know, I heard he owes money here, he owes money here. I heard so and so cut him off. I heard this, I heard that. You know, there are a lot of stories about people. You didn't hear those stories about Anderson, right? Anderson was, gosh, they're not pushing the price up. I don't see their hay buyers out. I heard they just sold a hay press. I heard Mark just put his house up for sale. You know, I heard that they're really focusing on the domestic market more, you know, but you never heard they're in trouble. You didn't hear that, right? The reality was, you know, 2 days before Thanksgiving, Farm Credit didn't call Mark up and say, we're done.
To Farm Credit's credit, they've been having long, hard conversations for a long time.
Right. There's a process there.
Yep.
And the market didn't have that information. And it's not just Anderson. Fundamentally in the hay export business, things have been upside down. You know, they've been upside down. And growers would say, well, yeah, I think my hay's worth $300. Why are you only offering me 200? Right? I mean, the growers did get that message. Since 2022, prices have come down. They responded as they should to that message and reduced acres. Right? That's the free market. That's the market adjusting, right? But they didn't have all the information. We still don't have all the information. You know, once all the information is out and we recognize what's going on, there'll still be hay grown in the basin. There'll still be hay grown in Idaho. Our customers in Japan, Korea, China, and the Middle East are still going to want hay. They're not going to want as much as we've grown in the past, and they're not going to be able to afford the high prices that they've paid in the past. And we have to figure out how to make that new reality work. Whatever it is, we have to figure it out. And it's going to be a combination of reduced acres, reduced margins, and greater efficiency. Somehow we have to figure that out. How are we going to be more efficient? And on the financial side, if banks aren't lending to hay exporters, how anxious are banks going to be to lend to farmers, right? To growers.
I mean, I know for a fact that lenders are sensitive to the role that they play in the industry, and letting any processor fail has and they acknowledge that there's downstream implications to that.
Yeah.
Again, I'm trying to be careful about how I say these things, and I don't want to imply that Farm Credit's letting Anderson fail. That's not the implication in that statement.
So if you look at the filing,
yep,
they were patient.
They were intentional, patient.
There was a message there, right?
Yep. It's observable in public documents.
Yes, exactly. Figure this out, boys. Figure this out.
I truly believe Farm Credit was doing the best they could. But banking in general, they're sensitive to the processing infrastructure in any geographic region, in any market, because of those cascading effects downstream. I mean, this is going to hit our fertilizer companies. This is going to hit at everybody in the value chain. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All the way down. And even if you're not doing business with Anderson, there's less demand in the marketplace. There's less marketing infrastructure. It's just going to be different. That's a hard conversation to have. Yeah, but it's a conversation that we should have started years ago. It's a conversation that if you're a Eastern Washington producer of any ag product, you need to be having it, right? To your point earlier, you know, the fruit guys, the hop guys, the onion guys, the potato guys, right? It's all rough, but the response is all the same. This is where we have to become excellent business managers. Mm-hmm. Excellent. This is why I was having conversations with a producer in Yakima, diversified, but mostly hay. He wants to survive, and he's willing to go through the pain of learning balance sheets, income statements of cash flow, right? And it's the businessy things that need to be addressed right now. There's no new variety of apple. There's no new variety of wheat. There's no new herbicide or pesticide that saves us. Yep. That's not what the problem is today. There's no new hay variety. There's no new baler. There's no new swather. There's nothing that saves us except being good business managers in this market.
Exactly. Yep.
In this marketplace.
Yep.
5 years from now, we get to evolve in the market and things change, and we get to learn new things 5 years from now. But right now, it's got to be perfect.
Yeah.
And actively communicated. If you have a lender, I owe money to the bank. It's been rough. Everybody's heard my troubles on drought. I'm actively communicating with the banker about how I'm changing my operation. Yeah. And building cash flow models, planning how I'm going to service
cash flow models. Cash flow models are so tedious. They're so boring. They're so frustrating.
There's nothing more important.
They are so essential.
Yeah.
Right? They are so essential. And we've had the luxury of not worrying about that.
Yeah. It's been too
by
easy.
And large.
By and large, it's been too easy.
Yeah. And that's, we're in a different world, a different environment. And if we want to be successful, we have to employ different skills, get different tools, and recognize that the way I did it last year or 10 years ago, it doesn't work. It doesn't mean I'm stupid.
The
It
world
doesn't mean
changes
I'm
and
bound.
I have to react. Yeah. Of course, the thing that you do in a drought year when you're losing your ass on the farm is quit your nice, stable bank job, which I did in 21, and my nice, stable university job now. I think I'm going to go out and do some consulting because I think there's so much need for this.
Yeah.
This is where I say have the maturity to ask for help. If you don't have the business experience, there are folks like me who have worked in farm and ranch management and for a bank. I've done this professionally for 10 years and I can help. So if anybody needs that help, reach out to me. I can do this. I can teach you the things that you need to know because bankers speak in balance sheets and cash flow statements. They don't speak in the price of milk in Japan.
Right.
It is possible. Everything's fixable. There's a human element that I want to add to this conversation too. Remember that you're not alone in any of this. So if you need folks to talk to, show up to meetings, interact with folks. That's actually healthy to get through this time period.
I think we have a problem when it comes to finances that we think we're supposed to understand this. You know, if you're a grower, did you get a degree in chemistry in order to know what chemicals to apply? You know,
No.
and
you rely on classes and your field rep.
Ultimately, you know, you're going to go to a field rep, and is there shame in that? You know, do you feel embarrassed by asking, hey, are there any new chemicals here that I got this situation, or, you know, what can I do with an application rate? Or you don't feel shame in that. It's like, no, he's an expert in that. And I'm not an expert in that. And so I'm going to ask him. It's the same thing with financial things. You know, you're a grower. Maybe you went to school and got an ag degree. You didn't get a finance degree. Don't be ashamed.
The other component is having a bookkeeper and a CPA is not the same as making good managerial decisions.
No.
Those are two. No. And using that data is the thing. Everybody has to file taxes, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody that's a hay grower, they have to file taxes. And so often that's the only reason that they employ a CPA or bookkeeper, so they can accomplish that task. Mm-hmm. And then they forget, or the banker is requiring a balance sheet and an income statement, right? So they can do year-over-year comparisons and do the trending.
Month-over-month comparisons.
For a trader, absolutely, 100%. For somebody with annual cash flows, maybe that is a little different.
Yeah.
But that cash flow plan, that is the thing to analyze every month. And what I'm trying to say here is there are tools, well-established tools that businessy folks use all the time to help analyze their business. These damn records, I'll let you lie to the tax man. And I'm going to beat you up on it, but I'll let you lie to yourself. You can't lie to your family. You can't lie to your business partners. You shouldn't lie to your bank. Don't do it. More money is not
long run. Yeah, it all comes out.
more money is not always the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if your banker cuts you off, say thank you and then figure out how to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like this gets to be really hard and complex, but at the same time there's a very simple set of tools that you have to start employing in your own management scheme,
Yeah.
in your own management setup, and not just handing it off to the banker and not just handing it off to the tax preparer. That's not what those records are for.
Yeah.
The records are for you first.
They're tools for you to make informed decisions. I hope that nothing that we've said will be misconstrued as, overly negative or judgmental or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, we're sensitive to the people that are struggling.
And this is what we're experiencing is a normal part of the business cycle. And that's not to say, it's normal for people to file bankruptcy or it's normal for growers to lose a lot of money. That's not normal, but it happens. And can we change anything about the past? No. And that's what people that are owed money realize very quickly is that I can't change that. That was a mistake I made. I can't change that now. I have to live with the consequences, whatever they're going to be. The real important thing is to say, I can't make that mistake again. What was my mistake? First off, what was my mistake? What did I do wrong? And then how am I going to compete? Because we're all in competition, right? How am I going to compete effectively in the future? I'm not losing my farm, right? I'm not losing my farm. I'm not giving up because they can grow cheaper potatoes in South America. I'm not giving up because they can grow cheaper hay in Eastern Europe. I'm not giving up because they grow more apples than we do. And I'm not giving up, right? So I have to find a better way. Is that a different variety? No. Is it a different crop? Maybe. But the essential thing is how do I operate my small business, right? How do I make the correct decisions? How do I turn this financing challenge? Because people all over the world are faced with, cash flow issues. That's just how that works. How do I turn that into a strength for my farm, as opposed to this is a weakness, right? I'm suffocating here. My cash flow is killing me. We have to find those solutions, and then you tweak it. You tweak it with your acreage, and you tweak it with your rotations. But if the fundamental financial part isn't there, it doesn't matter what you're going to grow, and it doesn't matter where you're going to sell it. You're going to have this problem, and so we have to take the positives from this and say, all right,
that's the one beautiful thing about this is that we will be stronger on the back end.
Yeah, we will.
That's the beauty of it.
And it doesn't, that's a sour grapes kind of a thing. It's true. It's absolutely true. People are going to suffer. They're going to suffer as a result of this. We need to be sympathetic and not cavalier. But if you're going to be a survivor, it's what can I learn from this? How do I need to change? And what can I do? And that's the role, if you don't know how to do this, if you don't know how to run your books, if you don't know how to make a cash flow projection, if you don't know how to talk to a bank, and you have the opportunity to get a consultant in, somebody that you trust that can coach you and advise you and help you with that, then that's what you need to do. That's a lot easier than saying to your wife, I got to take a job in town. If that wasn't your goal, right?
If that's not your goal.
And if it was avoidable and pride was the thing that stood in your way, then it's a mistake. Get that help, get that advice. These industry organizations, if they're really to serve their purpose, they need to do more than put on a free lunch. They need to do more than to host a venue where people can sell equipment. They need to do more for their members, and their members need to expect more. They need to say, look, we're all faced with this. We need to deal with this. We need some therapy here. How can we get it? We need group therapy here.
Yeah. We laugh, but yeah.
It's true. It's true. As you say, we're going to be stronger. We're not going to be stronger if we don't learn from it and we don't change, right? The way that we get stronger is we realize the market has changed. The competitive environment is more challenging. I'm up to that challenge. I'm going to figure out a way to deal with cash flow. I'm going to figure out a way to deal with my bad debts. I'm going to know how to talk to the bank. there's a positive outcome. It's at the other end of a dark tunnel. You have to decide you're going to get to the other end of it.
I have a story that I'm working on framing. This is of no consequence to anyone but me and my family. But next year is our 100th anniversary from when my great-grandpa first built a log cabin here in Ponderay County.
Wow.
Okay. Now, there's a lot of folks in agriculture that beat their chest about, yeah, we're a century farm.
Yeah.
But this is how I have to frame this really carefully, because my great-grandpa lost that property to tax title. And then my grandpa went and bought it back.
Wow.
It's a really cool story.
Yeah.
Obviously, he and my grandmother were dating, and it was my grandmother's dad. You're on track here. So he actually bought his girlfriend's dad's place, went to Arizona and proposed, and then they built a dairy.
Wow.
Okay, that was in 1946. So that's been 80 years. And then in 2005, we sold that property. And the next summer in 2006, I went out and bought a swather and baler and started my own operation.
Wow.
So we're at 20 years, 80 years, and 100 years.
Yeah.
And the thing that I want to coach through that is that's not real easy, continuous.
Right.
Like imagine milking cows, right? The stories about grandpa working at the sawmill and then coming home and clearing land and milking cows, and like none of that was easy.
Yeah.
So in all of that, there was a couple of new starts there.
Yep.
It's not just this easy.
The whole thing was a struggle.
All the way through.
Yep.
And I mean, I'm still struggling. There's no secret about it.
Yeah.
So that's part of how agriculture works. That's part of that 100-year story.
Yep.
Is it's not just linear.
No, not at all. No. You look at the hay export industry, it hasn't been all sweetness and light.
No.
From 1971 till this year, right?
No.
We had really bad years. We had, tsunamis. We had all the hay rained on. We had currencies collapse. The yuan collapsed one year and people didn't get paid. But you have to adapt. Survivors adapt. Survivors learn, they adapt, and they move forward. And so the question for all of us, regardless of where we find ourselves, in this supply chain here, is how am I going to adapt? Because you have to decide, I am going to survive. So how do I adapt? What's the new reality? What are the new rules? Because if you keep playing by the old rules, I'm going to get a big bank loan. My business model is based on $300 a ton alfalfa. I can pay all my bills based on that. When you get $220 for it, something happens. You start eating away at equity on.
That's why that balance sheet analysis is so important, because cash means nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
Cash, you have to plan for it, but cash in the bank means absolutely nothing. That's not the definition of being a millionaire. Like, that's not how you get there. All right, Don, I think we did a good job here. And I think it's warranted because of the condition of the industry.
We covered a lot of ground.
Yep.